All right, I'll say greetings this evening of your time as you create time. How are you?
Great.
Oh, all right. Allow me to begin by expressing my unconditionally loving gratitude for your willingness to participate in this interaction this evening. Understand from our perspective, there are no accidents. And it is from our perspective, from our end, being that these interactions have grown quite a bit, a specific pleasure for us to interact in perhaps what you might label a more intimate setting. So therefore, we thank those that did in that sense choose to participate, for it allows us to be a little bit more specific, a little bit more intimate. Before we proceed to the interaction, allow us to discuss briefly one of the aspects of ownership of your reality. For understand that because you do create your reality, create your life, you are therefore, by extension, an owner, so to speak, of that life, of that reality. And the sooner that individuals get a grasp of this and begin to act in that sense, like an owner, the sooner they get the results they say they desire. So therefore, allow us to introduce something. It may appear to you to not be new, but understand again that that in and of itself is a perspective. Your willingness to approach all situations as if anew allows you to experience them as fresh, as anew. So therefore, though you may have heard this concept before, we suggest that you tune your ears slightly differently so that perhaps you can again discover it for the first time. And what we will simply present to you is a phrase. Perhaps if you wish, you can entitle that phrase and perhaps this interaction, the wild card. For understand that even in your own society, in your game of cards, there is a particular designated card or cards that if they come up in a sense, allow you to perhaps progress or jump or perhaps achieve your ends a bit more quickly. For it is a very variable symbol. And therefore, shall we say, carrying around a wild card in your pocket may enable you in that sense to act as an owner of your reality in the instances where perhaps you are not doing so all the time. So allow us to first speak the phrase, again, listen with new ears, but understand that no matter in what situation that you are in your life, that this perspective will always align you with your purpose. And it will, in even the asking of the question, have you acting like an owner. For if you are an owner of your reality and acting that way, there is nothing within it that is extraneous. If something is created and you are the owner of the reality, obviously you must have created it. If you act like an owner, thereby you can use all your creations. If you deny even one, at least for that moment, you are not acting like an owner. You still own it, but you are not acting that way. So understand the simple phrase, how does this serve me? That's only half of it. Exactly the way it is such a wild card. And understand, you are progressing in many of the ideas that we discuss in taking back your power. And we are not sharing this with you to reiterate and allow you to redundantly use it where it already has been applied. No. We are now speaking about using all your creations in this way, including what you label fear, including what you label anger, and including what you label frustration. For understand, fear is believing a reality that you do not prefer is most likely. It is the same belief as saying to the universe that you believe that something you do not prefer is most likely. And obviously, by extension, this is not the statement or the perspective of an owner. For if you truly own the reality, there is nothing that can slip in there and get you. And if you feel fear in this regard, then you can use it, but not by pushing it away, not by denying it, by asking yourself, how does it serve me exactly as it is? What does it allow me to see about who I am? What does it allow me to understand about the degree to which I believe that I create my own reality? So the first application for the utilization of the statement, how does this serve me exactly as it is, would be when you feel fear. And also allow us to share that when you feel it, what will enable you to use it most fully is allowing yourself to feel it. You own the reality. You created the fear. If you believe you created it for a reason, dive into it. Use it. If you deny it, then you do not believe you own it. Then you believe it is extraneous and are not acting like an owner. So first and foremost, when you believe that something that you do not prefer is most likely, allow that opportunity to view your beliefs and to change perhaps the ones that you feel limit you in this way. For if you are honest with yourself and allow yourself to truly feel the fear, it will simply, when you ask it in that way, provide the proper perspective to allow you to answer it. And your willingness to feel it rather than squash it allows the emotion itself to play out. When you finally decide, all right, I am fearful. I will not deny this. I will feel this fear. I will really feel it and allow yourself to permeate your being with this feeling. You generally get to the point where, okay, now what? And therefore, you have used the emotion. And when you are at the precipice of now what, you can pull out that wild card, polish it off, dust it off, and ask yourself the question and allow yourself to be honest about where your limiting beliefs lie. For as you weed them out one by one, only then can you change them. So fear in that sense is one example we wish to utilize. Second example, anger. We have defined anger before as a rush, a complete and entire rush of alignment that simply tells you, presented with a particular perspective or reality, how you stand. This is me. This absolutely is not. And that is of service. For that is self-definition, self-exploration. And by knowing what is not you, you have a firmer grasp of what is. Now, the true anger, that alignment only lasts 10 to 15 of your seconds. And perhaps some of you, if not all, can relate to the fact that when you create what you call anger, it generally seems to last quite a bit longer. From the 10 to 15 second point onward, however, it is no longer that rush of alignment. It only takes that rush of alignment 10 to 15 seconds. Once you have defined yourself, most individuals will then go to the step of invalidating the thing they don't prefer or that is not representative of who they are. Rather than simply saying, this is me, this is not. The thing that is me is okay. The thing that is not is okay as well, though not for me. Individuals generally say, this is me, this is okay. This is not me, get out of here, you stink. And this perspective denies the validity of your exploration and denies the usefulness of how you have just defined yourself. So, when you have, in that sense, aligned, you can ask yourself, how does this serve me? Exactly as it is. And perhaps in this instance, it serves you by allowing you the opportunity to have it be all right to experience that rush of alignment and not find it necessary to continue or progress that rush of alignment into judgment, into invalidation. For the judgment and invalidation, though you sense you are rendering it to someone else or an external situation, can only be expressed by you to the degree that you contain it as an option. So if you are willing in that sense to judge and invalidate things which you do not prefer, you are most definitely also judging and invalidating the things within yourself that you do not prefer, meaning that you are judging yourself a high degree of the time. And you cannot express unconditional love and self-judgment at the same time. By definition, the moment you judge, the moment you say things are of unequal weight, one thing has more relative significance to another, then you cut yourself off from choosing it as an option. So therefore, it is always to your advantage to allow the equalization of all of these ideas. And utilizing them in positive service simply then allows you to transform the effect of your anger to a positive result. Yes, I did say that. You can actually get angry and only have a positive experience if you allow the 10 to 15 seconds of the alignment of anger to serve you and then not go to the extent of invalidating what is not representative of who you are. So therefore, the wild card functions in full swing in this example. Allow us to now discuss what you sometimes call frustration or boredom. For the purposes of this discussion, frustration can simply be defined as an emotion that arises from an individual's unwillingness to be in a given moment. When you are in a given moment, you are very wide-eyed and looking around at what is available in that moment. When, however, you project that there is something better out there that is not available in this moment, and leave it at that, you create a corresponding emotion you call frustration. Understand, you can allow that to serve you by using it as a sign that you are not in that moment, grounding yourself to that moment. Now, we are not saying that you cannot have goals and that you cannot have things that are exciting to you, which you may not be able to act upon, and therefore they are kept from you. No. As we have shared many times, the things that you are excited about that you cannot act upon will eventually be options to act upon. But what allows that to happen most quickly is the acknowledgement of what you can act upon in a given moment. For that does not then utilize the thing that is not available as a distraction. And when you get down to the business of living within each given moment, only looking at what's available, you do not create frustration, for there is always something to act upon. And from the choices, always one or more will stand out as more exciting than the others within your integrity. So you can use frustration to reground yourself to the moment. You can allow it to be of service to you exactly as it is by allowing it to point out to you that in that given moment, you are, in a sense, utilizing your consciousness in a way which does not serve you toward moving in that moment. When you do factor out what you cannot act upon and allow yourself to more clearly see what you can act upon, choose from those choices with your excitement, you begin a momentum, for there are results to the doing of the exciting things. And those results bring along, interlaced within them, new options, new opportunities that would not have necessarily been there. And the following of those options as they become available in each given moment, paradoxically, allows you to go toward the thing you say you wish to do that is not available right now most quickly. For though that thing seems unrelated to perhaps taking a walk in a given moment, for that is the most exciting thing, The taking of the walk and the most exciting thing are different facets of one expression. And what tells you this is the fact that they both excite you. That excitement commonality, that thread of commonality of the excitement is what tells you it is related and will in fact get you to where you say you wish to be most quickly, but not at the cost of living in this moment, having a good time in this moment and each moment forward. For as you generate the momentum of honoring your excitement with the integrity and choosing from what is available, by realizing that your excitement is your sign that of what is available, that one is most closely aligned to who you are, you generate a new momentum. And the new momentum, by definition, replaces the old momentum. And the results of the new momentum being that it is acting according to preference with integrity, the results are preferential results with built-in integrity. So therefore, though we have chosen to highlight those three particular limiting interpretations, fear, anger, and frustration, being that it is a wild card, it can simply be used in any situation. Anytime you feel there is something in your life which does not belong, saying that does not belong does not allow you access toward using it, does not allow it to be service to you. But when you say, how does this serve me? And not only how does this serve me, but how does it serve me exactly the way it is? Not if it was only a little bit this or that, exactly the way it is. You are now using your creations to your fullest ability. And when you allow your creations that come up seeming as negative to serve you, to deliver the message that you created them, being the owner of your reality, to deliver, they then transform and change their face. And this is most applicable in situations that you call in your life repetitive, negative happenings. For if something keeps happening, or seemingly keeps happening, it is always anew. But if you are interpreting it because it is very similar to the last time, you can understand again that nothing is extraneous. Nothing is extra. And even that particular idea can be used in a positive way. All of it. There are no exceptions whatsoever. None. Therefore, allow us to ask you now, how may we be of service to you exactly as we are? Shedding. Ace.
And at another session that I was with you by myself, we were talking about the whispers that I heard all around my bed in my room at night or whatever, and that I was very terrified. And you said to me at the time, that's probably why they have stopped trying to connect with you. And I felt very bad about that, because I felt like here's somebody trying to make contact with me that I probably decided to do in this lifetime. And here I am being so fearful that they can't do this. And I just wondered...
Well, understand, we did not tell you so that you would feel bad. But the idea is that there is a willingness on their end to honor so as not to seem to intrude upon you. So therefore, they will match you. And if you, in a sense, withdraw, so will they. But there are no hard feelings.
Could you tell me who they are or where they're from?
What is your particular perspective? If you are willing to share it, then again, we will expand.
All I know is that since that discussion I had with you, I've decided that the only way I can allow something like this to make contact with them is if I can love myself more and open up inside me, because it seemed like a loving feeling when I think back on it. Even though I was terrified, it was...
Well, do understand, we have discussed, and again, it is no accident, that fear in and of itself is believing that something you don't prefer is most likely. So perhaps you can begin to use this situation to nail down why you felt in a situation that felt loving, that something would occur that was not according to preference. And you may merely find now, running it through your belief systems anew that simply no longer applies. And you can test it then out by inviting the contact once again, and then, shall we say, monitoring to see whether your reaction is still fearful. But if you find that it is, you will still have the same option to say, not now. So our strongest suggestion would be to ask, being that you have found it a significant question and there is no idle curiosity, simply the expression of who you are and what you wish to explore, that you ask them.
I have one last question for now about my sister Holly, who lives in Maine. Within the last 10 years, she's beginning to have some remembrances of being detained aboard a spaceship and being examined on a table. And after seeing the movie The Intruders the other night, I just wondered if you had any sensing as to, would it be the Zetas or who might, in her case?
In her case, it would be that particular realm, that particular stream, yes. Understand that there will be many such, in a sense you can say, light bulbs popping on. One of the reasons for that particular, shall we say, multimedia event was, on some level, for at least some individuals, the dissemination of this information in a way that will allow other individuals who are participating directly in the detainment scenario to begin to realize that it is all right to have this happen, and that there are others as well, some of who have integrated the experience. For, again, purposes of allowing her to explore with an open mind, we will not say any more, but you can understand that that is the same source, yes.
Are they trying to mingle with us to start a new society, or?
There are many purposes for the interaction. That, in a sense, you can say is one.
Okay, I understand.
There is, in their particular society, all right, what you label replicative fading. What this is, in your colloquial language, is that for quite some time, they began to reproduce by what you would perhaps call, though not exactly, but it will do, artificial means. And by doing so, therefore lost the strength, so to speak, of their strain, as they over and over again utilized similar genetic material. So one of the reasons for the interaction is to allow a viable, shall we say, strain to be introduced for the perpetuation of their race, in a sense which is in danger, so to speak, of extinction.
These are the Zetas?
Yes. Again, that is a label.
Can I ask you one last quick question?
You can ask.
Ever since I was a little girl, a lot of my dreams, I've been running, and I'm very fearful, and I'm running away and trying to warn people.
All right, but before you proceed, you are all the characters in your dreams. So perhaps you can ask yourself, what are you running from inside yourself? And from that perspective, rather than introducing an external source chasing you, you may now have a different point of view to analyze that idea. Does something come to mind right now?
Oh, that's a wonderful suggestion, but because I was wondering, that was my next follow-up part to this question. When you're dreaming something, how do you know, like say you're dreaming you're aboard a spaceship, how do you know it's actually happening, or just your higher consciousness trying to work it out for you, like you just said to me, running away from myself, what am I running from? How do you know what's real and what's something that you're just making up to reflect your own feelings?
Well, the idea is that it is both. And it is both within this reality as well. For as you perceive other individuals as other individuals, they exist within your consciousness and are reflections directly of you. So it is not this or that, it is both. But understand again, from our perspective, waking dream reality, what you consider to be this reality, and sleeping dream reality both still fall under the category of reality. So therefore, they are all realities, no less real in any way than this one, but the rules, the parameters, the boundaries are different. The agreements are different. So in that particular reality, you are more cognizant of the fact that it is all an extension of you, but at the same time, you can play a game, so to speak, of visiting with others and other consciousness. When you create a dream, so to speak, of being upon a craft, understand you are aboard a craft. Sometimes that will be the only way that you will allow yourself to perceive it.
And the experience that you explained to me about Sedona the last time I talked to you, that you said it was a co-created experience, that wonderful love that I felt. Does that mean from the extraterrestrials and myself? It's not just something I was creating in my own mind?
Again, it is both, but in the way that you mean, yes, and is also related to the whispering.
Thank you. So I should use all my creations and figure this out.
Well, there are no shoulds, but if you get doing it, you will get a positive result. I guarantee it.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Elan.
Ace.
Greetings, friend.
And to you.
While on the subject, I have a good friend, Helen, who is something of a closet abductee, if that is possible. Recently, she was beamed up to a craft and examined by a woman with some kind of a frequency instrument. And Helen said that she felt her skin tingling, as it were. I'm curious as to what this instrument what was she testing for?
Well, you have already told me. It was a frequency analyzation device. We have discussed many times that though you consider yourself to be solid, that you are simply denser forms of energy. Matter and energy, even your scientists understand, are one thing. Different expressions, different densifications of the same one thing. Therefore, because energy, in a sense, is the source of sources, it can be, quote unquote, measured in many aspects according to frequency. Therefore, the tingling, in a sense, was the sensing of the reading of the vibration itself.
I see.
That is how they are able, in that sense, to, again, this is loosely speaking, quote unquote, as you have shared, beam someone up. They must be familiar with aspects, nuances, subtleties of the vibration to be able to only affect the portion of a vibration of an individual that corresponds to their position in space and time without, in a sense, shall we say, tampering with the rest.
Mm-hmm.
And as you grow, as you change, as you even get a new idea, your vibration changes. It is constantly changing. There is a portion of it which you may say, so to speak, remains the same. This is what we refer to as your signature vibration. This is what identifies you as an individual. But shall we say, wrapped around that signature vibration is an ever variable vibration. And that will change and perhaps need to be monitored, remonitored, rechecked, and so forth.
Well, okay. And the examiner also said to Helen, I see you are on diet number 5. Could you tell us about this diet?
No, ask her.
Okay. Then another...
Do understand that when individuals from your society deal with extraterrestrials, the interactions, the extraterrestrials themselves are as mirrors. So therefore, what you put out is literally what you get back from the interaction. Therefore, if you put in any degree of fear, you generally get back fear, and fear is judgment, so generally it may be accompanied by pain, emotional, physical, spiritual pain. But the pain is in the judging, in the assigning of meaning, and not from the interactions themselves.
Okay. Then to shift time a bit, in 1943, August, the USS Eldridge.
No comment.
No comment on that?
Not now.
Okay.
Perhaps there is something in your present reality we can discuss.
Well, okay. Yes, indeed, there are many things. I believe we are in the process of seeing the Orion and Pleiadean civilizations come together. I feel that
All right. What do you base that observation upon?
Some encounters in dream state, in meditation state, also interchanges such as our own, materials that I've become acquainted with through a variety of different sources.
All right.
It certainly has the ring of truth to me. I believe that there's an agenda for the coming together, and bit by bit I'm seeing pieces or glimmerings, and perhaps you could speak about this agenda a bit for us.
Not really. The idea is you, in a sense, are tapping in and creating it. Allow yourself to access that same source. It is not our particular focus, though we understand perhaps the overall generalized blending of the energies. The specifics that you speak of are not apparent to us, so therefore, have some fun.
Well, all right. And thank you.
And to you.
And I have one further question.
All right. Then we will proceed to another and perhaps come back to you.
Well, okay.
Proceed.
At the time when an ancestral civilization split into the Orion and Pleiadean, what was the strong attraction of the Orion option?
First of all, it is not our perspective that such a split in that sense necessarily occurred. Understand, all creations, all explorations are valid. They are all literally equal in the eyes of God or all that is. Everything is within all that is or God. That is why we call it all that is. There is nothing that is outside. Therefore, since everything is an expression of all that is or God, everything has equal value. Now it has, and understand this very carefully, relative significance to a particular point of view, but from the overall, perhaps you can say, eyes of God, all is equal, all is unconditionally loved. Proceed.
Well, okay. Well, I'm not sure that it addresses the question. There. You say you don't perceive that a split actually occurred.
The idea, thank you. There was a bit of a defocusing. The idea is that there is nothing any worse about the Orion exploration. And underlying in your question itself is the supposition that why would anybody want to choose that? And that is not looking at all expressions as equal. Now, you personally may not wish to, but understand that other consciousness have the right and the reason to explore that, for that is a valid creation as well. The asking of the question preassumes an inequality in experience. Perhaps that is more the experience of negativity, but that is an option as well.
Well, no, it seems to me that I wasn't approaching it with that supposition, actually, but out of...
In the wording of the question, why would someone want to do that, is the underlying feeling that why would anybody want to? And what we are saying is because it is a valid exploration, which perhaps has less significance, obviously, to you at this time than to those partaking directly in it. Plus, exploring that degree of negativity also has, being that there is a rubber band effect, the more negativity in that sense you explore, when you let go, the farther and faster it flings into positivity, that there will also be, perhaps you can say, a very positive result that they will also explore.
Mm-hmm.
Does that help a bit more?
Yes, that helps a lot. And thank you very much.
And to you. Shedding.
On.
Peace.
Good evening.
Greetings.
The question is, getting on to the Intruders a little bit. They showed in the movie.
By the way, we would prefer the terminology visitors, but do proceed.
Visitors. Well, they named it Intruders, but that's not our...
The perception of intrusion is by the individuals who are participating in the interaction without any, shall we say, acknowledgement of their agreement to do so.
Okay, so we'll use the term visitors.
So when there is no acknowledgement of the agreement, it can appear as an intrusion. When there is acknowledgement of the agreement, here comes those visitors.
It was very interesting. They showed these the babies in what seemed to be artificial life supporting systems in a circular part of the craft.
Ace.
Could you elaborate on that? They look very human.
They, in that particular instance, were symbolic of hybridized beings. They were not entirely human, but had, again, many of the characteristics, because, as you say on your planet, there is a recapitulation in the embryonic stage of many of the species upon your planet. So therefore, depending upon the stage of development in the embryonic stage, there is the resemblance of many of the species that are attached. So shall we say they perhaps appear a bit more human in the fetal stage, and as they grow, a bit less.
Okay, because what was interesting is towards the end of this particular film, based on true information from the book, this one woman who had a child, well, it was her child basically, they had taken the child and it had been on the ship.
And that particular instance did not have a biologically human father.
Right. But
so understand, when the individual said, it is mine, in a sense, it was theirs as well.
Right. And the child looked, obviously very human. Was the child totally human?
No, it was hybridized.
Because it didn't look hybridized.
And what would, in that sense, cue you into the hybridization, again, that was only a symbolic presentation, was the larger cranium, and shall we say, in that instance, though that not necessarily be entirely accurate, the sparser hair. That was a female.
Well, the female, the grown-up female, the taller female, looked hybridized, but the child looked very much, less hybridized.
Perhaps you may wish to look more closely. Shedding.
Elan.
Yes.
I saw The Intruders also. Didn't care much for the title either.
Oh, all right.
And I got a lot of ideas from it that rather than being abducted or detained, that some of us on this planet are now becoming aware of this idea and possibly would want to interact with them in a waking state voluntarily, creating our reality according to preference. My reality, by preference, would be very excited to help them with this project.
Then allow me to dub you Sir Ambassador.
Thank you.
And understand that you can simply render the invitation. And perhaps you will then allow yourself to feel or test your own waters, for you can see how you react should they respond.
That's what I did. I decided to create a gateway, basically, in the yard of my home. I discussed this with Kenny when he was up there one night. And I said, if they are telepathic beings, they probably know that we are not afraid of them anymore, now that we know what they are.
They, in that sense, understand perhaps things about yourself sometimes that you do not allow yourself to see. So there may be the understanding that on the surface you feel no fear, but they, in a sense, can sense what's subsurface, below the surface, the issues that perhaps you would force to the surface upon attracting a direct interaction. So therefore you can trust their sensing. And if you do find where there are areas where you still experience fear, pull out the wild card.
Very interesting. Yeah, I thought a lot about, interacting with them, and I feel a lot of love towards their society.
One other practical suggestion, should you find yourself within a physical scenario. Perhaps you can say an opened attitude of unconditional love and acceptance, and, in a sense, greeting, would be to extend your arms outwardly, palms forward and open, and emanate and radiate from yourself unconditional love. That, in a sense, is felt very strongly, and may also allow you to quell or calm any fears that come up once you allow them to serve you.
I see. Now, from my understanding, in between life, people who are of the Zeta Society could choose to reincarnate into a human form in our society.
Not in the way that you mean, no.
Can you explain that to me then?
Explain why you believe that that was so.
Okay, I had read that in a book by Lisa Royale called Visitors from Within, about the Zeta Reticuli.
Yes.
And in this book, it more or less explained that some Zeta consciousness had more or less come into our society, into the human form, where later they would be, say, detained and the genetic material would be taken. they would not remember it most.
Our perspective upon this is that it is very, very rare. For you are speaking about a society that, though they present themselves in individual bodies, have a linked mentality and do not truly perceive themselves in the way that you are speaking of and the way that you experience yourself as an individual. So their particular relationship to reincarnation, so to speak, is a little bit different than yours. And they have a tendency to, in the sense that they are individuals, reinsert themselves into their own reality. Now understand that one of the reasons, aside from the aforementioned ones, of their interactions with your society is also to observe many aspects about you as individuals. For they, again, perceive themselves as a collective and are afraid, in a sense, do not entirely understand individuality in the way that you create it. So therefore, it is not so much that they incarnate into your society. If they did, in a sense, it would be a bit disorienting, so different and, shall we say, separated from the whole, is it? That they physically interact with your society, and one of the reasons is for the observation and to begin to amass information about emotionality and about individuality.
Okay, I understand all that. Well, how do they choose the actual individuals they're going to work with then?
Many times, again, the agreements are made in what you consider to be between life state, but with humans who have reincarnated as humans. And you will find many times that they will follow, so to speak, particular family lines. Mother, offspring, offspring. So the agreements will also be between human individuals to be born into such families.
I think that the interpretation that I had of what I read was probably wrong, and you've clarified it for me. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Sharing. All right. Do proceed.
Were the whisperings in my bedroom the Zetas?
No comment, but again, they were the same individuals that you perceived in unconditional love in your Arizona. And again, ask them. They will be more than willing to tell you and will be overjoyed that you listen. Then we can speak a little bit more candidly. At this timing, allow us to pause for a break of 10 to 15 of your minutes of counting and resume contact if desired at that time. All right, I'll say, continue sharing.
Elan,
Ace.
greetings.
And to you.
Since Tony isn't here tonight,
You are going to ask where we are and who's upon the craft.
you win.
Well, we are upon or around our own planet at this point in timing. This will change shortly. I am aboard my craft with one other male that we have not discussed and a female who has not as of yet been named, but will eventually also from time to time communicate through this channel.
Now, do you at times circle other planets with your spacecraft besides Earth?
It will simply depend upon the exploration and who we are in contact with at that time. Understand that for purposes of approaching a planet, we utilize scout craft. For purposes of approaching a solar system, we utilize what you would call a mother craft from which our scout crafts are deployed. From time to time, we will assume an orbit for these particular interactions, but that is not entirely necessary. Just happens to be that it has fallen that way up till now.
So you personally do not give all of your effort of this type to planet Earth?
Shall we say myself, I am a bit concentrated on this. You can perhaps say I am, colloquially speaking, a bit more novice at this than some. So this is, shall we say, a good portion of my concentration, but not my only concentration.
See.
One other particular society that I have recently become aware of, members of our society have been in touch with them before, have an interesting custom perhaps I can share with you. There is a particular animal that they ingest, eat from their particular waters. And it has become quite popular to partake of this particular species, for there is an interesting effect on your consciousness when you consume the meat of this particular entity. And that is for, perhaps you can say, a few brief flashes or moments. When you eat this particular being or entity, you have the experience of seeing through the eyes of that entity. It is fleeting, however, you can get a sense of it, and it has become quite popular.
Huh. And I assume that being that you ingest is not sentient.
It is similar to what you would consider upon your planet animal consciousness versus human or dolphin-style consciousness. Yes.
I see. Do you do anything else personally in our solar system, other planets that you investigate?
No.
Okay.
Now, again, we have observed physically some of this idea in our particular ongoings, but there is not the concentration, for I personally, at least, are not connected to many of these other levels of dimensionalities. Understand, for each planetary body that you have, there is by definition consciousness connected to it. Though in your particular dimension of experience, your planet would seem to be the only inhabited one. In some dimension, each and every one is inhabited. So therefore, right now, I am not directly connected to this, but I'm aware peripherally of it.
I see. Let me switch over. 3-4 nights ago, I attended a session, an update session by Colin Andrews, the fellow on crop circles over from England.
All right.
And he indicated a lot of research was going on by various people on the symbolism of the crop circle configurations.
Well, how exciting. What did he find?
And, well, he referenced frequently to various indigenous native groups like our Hopi Indians here in the U.S. and other African cultures and so forth, and indicated some of their symbolism in their culture and how similar it was to some of the crop circle configurations.
Well, understand there has been visitation in what you would label to be your historical past. So some of this is directly the same postcard.
Right, I see. Well, then a new element, at least that I had never heard before, that he shared with the group that night was he showed a couple pictures of, I guess you'd call them just holes in the ground. I think he referenced Switzerland mainly, and these might be in the shape of a cube from the top, or a square or rectangle. Maybe they were of dimensions 30, 40 feet wide, maybe 20, 30 feet deep, where the ground, the soil, just simply had disappeared and left this cavity, left this crater in the ground with absolutely no evidence of any excavation or anything like that.
Now, do understand that there are some of these that are produced by members of your society, what you would call in hoax fashion, but there are some bona fide representations of that form as well from extraterrestrial visitation.
Well, this is the first I had heard of this. He indicated that this was not something within the last year. It's been going on for a few years, I guess.
Ace.
But how in the world does that coordinate, if at all, with the crop circle approach? Or does it connect? Or
To some degree, in particularly your Switzerland area, it is more the idea of certain effect from the craft itself rather than purposeful markings for identification within your consciousness. But it can be both as well.
Nice.
There are physical results from the landing of craft, or even from craft coming to proximity of the ground, depending upon what stage of activation the craft is at. Will have certain effects upon the ground.
I can't resist bringing up the Intruders again tonight.
All right, not you too.
Yeah.
All right.
And I focused on the second part. To what extent, may I ask, are you personally even aware of what was shown on the screen as well as the content?
Well, as we have discussed many times, when something is within the memory banks of the channel, we can access it. So if there is something specific you wish to discuss, we have access to it through this channel.
Oh, okay, just one item then, and that is in part 2, where I happen to watch it more closely.
By the way, for those who may be wondering, no, we don't watch it from space.
But the physical portrayal or special effects, if you will, showing the actual ETs, to me was rather impressive. And look,
And from our perspective, perhaps you can say of anything to date, most accurate.
yes, okay, I just wanted how you felt about that. Thank you very much.
In a sense, from our perspective, and this is also a perspective held by the channel, the presentation was excellent. It was within the boundaries and parameters requested, and that is all we shall say.
I was so pleased that at one point near the end, there was a softening of what had been to me so negative and fearful into,
Yes.
I believe that this is not evil.
But there is a purposeful, shall we say, rationale toward presenting it in the way that it was for the individuals involved in the interaction. Many times, not always, but many times do begin in fear. So to begin to present it with perhaps some of the ideas which may have a fearful effect gives the watcher some of the effect. And then as the individual symbolic characters integrate what's going on around them, so do you, the perceiver. So there were many purposes, many rationales for the presentation and the inclusion of the symbols presented.
Great. Thank you very much.
And to you.
Elan,
Ace.
you mentioned that this was the way it was requested to be presented that way.
And then I said, and that is all we shall say. But very astute. Do understand. And when I say we, I may perhaps be referring to an overall association of worlds rather than Untitled Chapter. But there is some input on certain levels. And again, from the reticulum themselves. Don't mean to be mysterious. But when we say we are not allowed to share something, there is no high council preventing us. It is the higher selves of the individuals in the interaction. So trust your higher self.
Elan?
One moment. Is that all?
Yes.
Ace. Female.
Would the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind have come from the same stream of energy?
It was an early, shall we say, presentation of dissemination of this type of information with many accurate ideas.
Because the ending was most loving in that
Yes.
movie, I felt. Yes. It was
And of that particular style of presentation, movie versus television, that to that point would be the most accurate representation as well, with perhaps some liberties taken as to the variety of crafts. Since from our perspective, there are no crafts, shall we say, utilizing your slang, in the shape of Norelco razors. Though I take that back, perhaps there are, we are not aware of them.
I have a question about higher selves.
All right.
If we are just a fine pinpoint of a focus in our life here on this planet, how do you avoid getting angry at your higher self if something is very negative happening to you and you can't seem to figure out how it's serving you?
Well, from our perspective, you are not gearing your perspective toward even wishing to allow it to be of service to you. Just asking, how is this of service to me exactly as it is, will always yield an answer, but individuals do not resort to that usually at first. So if you can provide an example whereby you actually requested, how is this of service to me, and it was then not obvious, perhaps we can discuss that. But from our perspective, giving yourself the opportunity to ask that question will yield at least some starting place. And again, the way you are phrasing it, you are assuming that your higher self is the owner and you are simply the driver. No. You are the owner. And if you perhaps are angry, perhaps looking toward an external symbolic higher self is another way to externalize and deny your own ownership, whereby saying, how is this of service to me? Allowing it to be of service to you if it is not immediately obvious that it is, assuming that it is, moving on within your reality, and then allowing yourself to see later on how it was of service to you. There is simply not one particular example that we can furnish whereby something could not be of service. And when individuals even discuss this idea with us, it is always our perspective that, all right, that is your one perspective on it. Now, here is a positive perspective for the same idea. For all, again, events, perspectives are truly neutral, at least in the sense of containing equal potential for positive and negative. We are tuned to the positive interpretation. You have been, as a society, tuned to neutral, negative, and some positive, but are now beginning to look at the fact that the negative focus is the only thing giving you the negative effect. Asking and ascertaining why you created something does not give a negative effect. It starts a process of self-realization. If that is not clear, please proceed.
No, that makes a lot of sense, especially with your introductory statements tonight. It all seems to tie together.
Oh, thank you.
I would just like to ask you where my mother is, who died in 1976 September. Her name is Orion Smith.
Our strongest perception is that she is reincarnated as a female, age 6.
Oh. Because there's been, my younger daughter has been having a lot of dreams and connections with my mother, and I just wonder...
Yes, but just because she is reincarnated does not mean she does not have the same soul, and does not mean that she also does not interact in her dream reality. So that is altogether possible, yes.
Is she in the New England area of this country? The child?
Yes, we understand. Our perception is Southwest United States.
How do you perceive sensing things about us when we ask you questions like about our past lives or about the future?
Oh, thank you. In a sense, understand, as we have shared, these conversations go on many levels, and we create ourselves to be cognizant of many levels that we create ourselves in, whereby you create a certain portion of your quote-unquote levels as subconscious or non-cognizant levels. We have access to these levels and trust what we get from it. Generally, when we then render it to you, you will trust it, but you could skip the step altogether and simply access it directly. So again, it is the aspects of yourself that you do not right now allow yourself total access to, which we speak freely with. And how this also translates into your reality after leaving this interaction is some of the communications are made also to your quote-unquote higher self, whereby you may not hear them right now, but when you quote-unquote can use them or need them, meaning you can use them, they are simply right there.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
One last question. Will we ever be able to get rid of all the nuclear waste on this planet? And what could we ever do with it to dispose of it? Or
there are many, many ideas. There is, shall we say, a methodology already existing for the destruction of them, but you will also find your society to begin through your technology to create a particular polymer. Perhaps you can call it a type of plastic-seeming polymer that can contain radioactive waste in such a way that when the radioactivity filters through the fabric or the network of the polymer, what is occurring is that it's is rendered inactive. Perhaps you can say simply turning it to another form of pollution, but one that is more manageable.
Thank you very much.
And to you. Shutting.
One.
Yes.
Dealing with that question about pollution, about nuclear waste for a minute, and it's my understanding that the technologies that some of the brothers and sisters on board the craft have from various civilizations have the ability to deal with this kind of problem other than creating another form of pollution.
Well, understand, we mean that most loosely. In other words, the particles become inert. They are still particles, but now that they are manageable and can be put in a place where they are inert, in a sense, they are not really still pollution. But understand, it is not our job, meaning the society you are referring to as well, to live your lives and make your decisions. Should you unitize as a planet and invite our participation, that is different. Then we can discuss it. But very often when individuals discuss the increased technology of our societies, they do so from the perspective that we have something to give you that you cannot, shall we say, create yourself, and therefore would save you in a sense with this technology. You are not drowning. There is no saving to be done. It is simply the matter of decisions being made on an individual basis, which then allows a collective decision to be made, a unitization to occur, an invitation to be placed, and then perhaps we can share or exchange many of these ideas. But we do not buy into the helplessness of you needing us to the point where you cannot make do without us. And that would be doing you a disservice were we to approach it in that way, as your saviors.
Right. I was just curious as to what your feelings were on that particular subject. A couple other questions.
Now, understand, we have also shared with members of your society, even within these interactions, particular techniques from time to time. Certain ideas of aligning your vibration with the vibratory frequency of your planet and so forth. And with what we have provided, nothing has been done. So therefore, when you will begin to utilize what is already available to you, that will also bring you closer to access to other things.
I see. My other question is about, in terms of the leaking out of information, let's say through the film titled Intruders or through any other types of programs on our media, mass media. It seems as if
can be as subtle as what you call a commercial or an ad in a magazine as well. And you will find the increased occurrences of references to craft, references to beings, references in your funny papers and so forth. Many, many forms. It will crop up, even on t-shirts.
Are there basically people, obviously people in charge secretly of saying when the media can show something and when they cannot show something?
Well, in a sense, yes.
But it seems as if now they're showing more than they were, let's say, a year ago.
Well, shall we say, individuals are getting wind of it anyway. So it is more comfortable from both ends, since a pressure is being produced by individuals now demanding to know this. There is an alleviation of the pressure by the slow dissemination.
Did our government feel that we weren't smart enough to understand all this stuff?
Not necessarily smart enough, but perhaps in viewing, for instance, again, this is quite an antiquated example, but will do, the reaction of your society in your early 1900s to your War of the Worlds radio broadcast, that would at least on some level allow them to still think to this day that there would be a degree of panic, although there was no information back then, where it has been slowly and subtly disseminated for the past several years, but also to some degree understand that they do not entirely understand the phenomenon, even though there are agreements, even though there is contact. So there is still fear from their end about what, if individuals found out about this, they can even do about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, in reference to this thing...
And if there is a clearly defined situation and your politicians cannot address it, that is one of the ways they are voted out of office. So it is a hold on their own job to some degree.
Now, when the Intruders film was aired, you mentioned something earlier about how they were given, there was some supervision, I believe. I'm not sure if I'm using the right terminology you mentioned earlier, about there was some interacting to come out with the film the way it was.
The idea is that you can understand that the interaction was done by humans, but some of them were, shall we say, connected to extraterrestrial sources, particularly and most obviously what you labeled the detainees, or we labeled the detainees. You still label them the abductees, but none of them have been taken away and not brought back. So even in your own language, abduction would not, in that sense, be appropriate. You are only being detained.
Well, one thing that bothers me about our media, and this is a few weeks ago, supposedly in the morning, it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, a friend called me up and said at 6:45 in the morning on this particular day, it was on a Wednesday, that CBS News aired a video from Russia of a craft that was the size of a football field, a square-sized ship. And it was aired in the morning early, and then it was never seen in the primetime news area.
Yes, but this is dissemination. This is leakage. A bit at a time, subtle ways, perhaps what you might sometimes label, though not precisely, subliminally.
Right, but I called up CBS in New York because I was somewhat upset about the fact that they didn't show it on the evening news when most people are home. And the woman put me on hold for about 10 minutes, then comes back and begins to tell me we don't have time to talk about this, and that was the end of the conversation.
All right. Well, that can be the form from their particular end.
But
you need not be bothered. Rather, rejoice for the fact that it was even done. Perhaps set your VCRs and next time catch it.
Right, but doesn't that, some sort of, in Earth terminology, in our thinking sometimes, at least for me anyway, I looked at it as a media cover-up because it was...
Well, put it this way. Several months ago, even that would not have occurred. So should you choose to look at it as a cover-up, perhaps you will get that effect. But if you look at it as, look at how much more they can now do, you will begin to see how much more is being done.
Could you tell us what that craft represented in terms of civilization?
Civilization? No. In terms of craft, you were seeing, shall we say, smaller mother craft, very close.
Very close.
Yes.
You don't want to elaborate on the consciousness. Could you tell us any more about the consciousness of the craft in terms of the mass consciousness on the craft, where they came from?
In a future interaction.
Okay, thank you.
And to you.
Elan,
There will be time for but a few more sharings. Mail.
in the private session, I spoke to you about the motion picture Cocoon.
Yes.
And you mentioned a name for them?
Well, the idea is that was only a symbolic representation. But when, shall we say, shedding the skin and beholding the beings of light, they are, shall we say, similar to what you would label certain density levels of consciousness from Sirius, the star Sirius. Star system, actually.
Okay.
But again, it was not a precise representation of Sirius civilization. They do not come down and don human skin, no.
What density would they be in?
What we were discussing with you would loosely be labeled fifth, sixth density, but being perceived from a third density viewpoint, thereby seeming to have a particular form of body.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yes.
Female.
Oh, I was listening to the tape "You Are Home" the other day, and it reminded me that during that tape, you had someone was having some energy alignment done, and there were three people interacting with it. That one representing positive, negative polarities, and one the integration of the two.
Ace.
Could you elaborate more on that? And is that a process that we could?
Well, in a sense, understand. Generally, individuals in your society will attempt, and I use the word purposefully, to get rid of the negative and go toward the positive. The alignment in that way was an acknowledgement of the validity and the existence and the choice to experience both, but with a fulcrum energy put in there to understand that there is a middle point between the positive and negative, which is a common point to both the positive and negative. So it is a form of centering, it is a form of integration, and it is a form of balance. Was there something specific you were seeking?
Well, I was wondering if it would be a process that we could utilize ourselves.
Oh, yes. And your imagination will color it to change it for your society, if you trust it. Can simply be three individuals standing around a fourth individual in repose, and in a sense, utilizing the hands above the body, representing the energies. But also, one can, in a sense, stand for body, one can stand for what you call mind or mentality, and one can stand for spirit, and in a sense, achieve a balance of those triadic orientation as well.
Neat.
All right, tidy again.
Yeah.
Is that of service?
Yes, it is.
Oh, all right, and we thank you.
Elan?
One moment. You may find another way to express this is by drawing the four beings, one in repose. And you can make them any society you wish.
Yeah. Good.
Oh, all right. Will that be all?
Good.
Female.
Elan, regarding Maui's art, my perception are the faces that are coming through are like a human taking a photograph of somebody.
In a sense, yes.
Alright. The different faces are from multi-civilizations.
Sometimes many varieties within one civilization. For understand, when observing your own society from space, so to speak, you have many varieties of human. Very tall, very short, very light, very dark, etc. So therefore, there is a natural variation within many societies. Perhaps you can say ours is one of the exceptions.
Can you make a comment on what is occurring through Maui's art at this point in time?
We can reiterate that an elaborate tale is being told. A story is being written. You are, a bit at a time, getting or midwiving in the characters, and to some degree have been midwiving in the settings. All as you continue along this process will become apparent, and there is no need to force or begin to force the pieces of the puzzle together. It will simply be obvious the state of the puzzle and what pieces will be coming.
Thank you.
And to you. Sharing.
Elan,
Yes.
as I'm sure you know, a couple weeks ago, Barbara and I spent a wonderful afternoon with the dolphins down in Key West in Florida.
Yes, we thank you. And in interacting with them so closely, so intimately, is it not obvious what we are speaking of about their sentience?
No question, in our minds at least. The staff there at the Dolphin Research Center indicated that there was a lot of activity going on trying to figure out the code, to decode, if you will, the communication.
Well, again, they are going on very physical terminology when they say that. And understand that their ability to communicate physically, although is also within your range of perception, also extends a bit above and below what you would call your auditory range. So to some degree, there is a built-in limitation to that without technology. However, we have discussed this many times. The activating mechanism for telepathy, which is our term for telepathy, since empathy is part of the process, is emotion. So submersing yourself with them in the water and playing around in joy creates your ability, a conducive atmosphere to create that emotionality. And that, at first, is the ground which you shall meet upon. So analysis is all well and good, but do not leave out the emotion, the energy, emotional component.
Well, we certainly had a lot of fun.
Nice. So did they.
Is there any particular significance to the fact that their brain is physically larger than ours? Is that to handle the sonar system they use, or?
One moment. To some degree, that is one of the reasons. And also their utilization on an ongoing basis of what you call telepathy. The more you utilize that particular sense, the sense of vibrational discernment itself, very often the resulting, shall we say, physiological change will be growth of certain areas of the cerebrum of the brain.
I see. In terms of number of brain cells, is there any particular comparison you might share with us?
Not that we have access through the channel, no.
As you may know, and I'll do something a little bit different here maybe, and that is Lois here in our group also spent time with the same dolphins down there. And either Lois or Barbara right now may want to ask a question. If not, then I'm done, but they might have a question.
Oh, all right.
Maybe not.
Is this so?
No.
Okay,
Oh,
thank you very much. Thank you.
We thank you for the opportunity and your willingness to facilitate not only with your own explorations, but that of your friends. Are there any questions over here from females? All right. Do you have a statement? Should that change, please feel free to share.
Elan,
Yes.
when I was
Thank you, by the way.
Thank you. When I was a young girl of 5 or 6, I remember being brought out into the yard by my grandparents forcefully because they told me I would see something I probably would never see again. I saw lights up in the sky, and I was wondering.
First of all, it is not our perspective that you will necessarily never see it again, but you were brought to witness an extraterrestrial craft.
I was.
Yes.
Thank you.
And it was quite obvious to them.
The whole neighborhood was out in the yard. It was quite obvious.
Very
to
exciting.
everybody out there. Yes. Thank you.
And although you sometimes believe that seeing is believing, it is also the other way around. So somewhere within you, you already believe that it was at least possible. And we thank you.
Elan,
Yes.
I have spoken with you quite a while ago concerning the same issue that I'm going to bring up again. Currently, I'm taking...
By the way, how are you doing?
Good.
Are you beginning to at least begin to entertain the notion that sometimes you will turn within and you need not judge it?
Yes.
All right. Do proceed.
Okay. I find that my mental state is such that I don't know if you remember what I was... Do you remember?
Ace.
Okay. I'm taking currently psychotropic medication, and I'd like to get off of it.
Now, what is your sense for one of the things that we shared is as you do begin to not invalidate the particular phases that you may create to integrate your consciousness, quote unquote, back together, that you would have a sense of when it was time to begin to wean yourself from that symbol.
I would know that. I would feel that. Is that right?
So have you had any sense of it? And again, perhaps, do you feel better doing it a bit at a time rather than, as you say, cold turkey?
Oh, no, I would never go cold turkey.
All right.
Just that I have specific rippling of the water, so to speak, in my family. There's the sense that if there's the slightest change of behavior or thought or motion, that I'm getting sick again.
Well, let me then alert you to the fact that they will always think you are sick again then. For you will always change. You will always grow. As you change your beliefs according to preference, you will begin to express your emotions in a positive way. So that is automatic.
Right.
Now, can you simply be willing to do so according to who it is you feel yourself to be and allow them to see who you are presenting yourself as rather than allowing them to set up a mold of how you should be?
No, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. I'm not
You
gonna,
sound like you believe that.
I do. I've made that decision.
That is all it takes. The decision, the willingness to act upon it, and then, And here's another key. When they come along and say this and that and this, you simply say, all right, thank you. I appreciate you sharing that with me.
Yeah.
I can now decide whether I agree with you or not. In this particular instance, I do not, but I am no less glad that you shared it. Thank you. Goodbye. That will leave them scratching their heads.
And another thing that's also great pressure right now for me is that I'm seeing someone who is very, very anxious to see me begin this process.
Well, understand you've already began it. So alert that individual that he need not wait around. It's already happening. Do it at whatever pace, however, you are comfortable at. For no one else, whether they are someone you wish to hear from or do not wish to hear from, can tell you who you are. Now, they can give you feedback, and you can bounce off of that feedback. Yes, I agree. Yes, I don't agree. But everything is of service to you. For if you agree with it, it bolsters and reaffirms and reasserts your position. If you do not agree with it, it bolsters, it reasserts, and it reaffirms your position. You cannot lose. You always discover more about who you are.
You do. It's funny because I was telling my friend Suzanne tonight on her way here that I feel in a way that I have all the consciousness of what it was like to go through 20 years of my life, quote unquote, normal. And then suddenly, 15 years later, be taking these drugs and the side effects that they have.
But understand, from our perspective, it is not a matter of being normal or not normal. It is simply a matter of the fact that at some time along your path, you decided to not be not normal, natural. Normality is arbitrary. It is a viewpoint. It is only relative to something else. But naturalness is normal for you. So begin to get in touch with what is natural for you, and only you can know that. But if something comes up, an issue, an emotion, a belief, a thought, you can take a pill if you wish to squash it, or you can look at the thought, look at the belief, look at the emotion. Realize, first of all, that your wild card is in your pocket too. So therefore, you can take anything, the belief, the emotions, negative thoughts, and even apply the wild card to that. How does this serve me? In the instance of an emotion, as we have shared, emotions are always, no exceptions, a response to a belief. So if you have an emotion which is unacceptable, oh joy, there is an unacceptable belief attached to it. And you can't change that belief till you first acknowledge it. Denial is the first thing that holds it from you. So therefore, you can use it in that way by saying, all right, I feel just awful. Acknowledge it. It's all right to feel this way. Perhaps I don't prefer to, but it's all right. Now that I feel this and am trying on these clothes, so to speak, what must I believe to feel this? Or what must any person believe in order to feel this? Then you'll come up with a belief. Oh, I do believe that. And I don't prefer to. But I will acknowledge it, for that is the only way I can change it. Oh, now that I know I believe that, I would much rather believe this. You now have in front of you your new belief. And all you need do is extrapolate from the new belief. When trying on the new belief, now how do you feel now? You will feel differently. It's the preferred belief. You will have a preferred emotion. You will think different thoughts, for now you are happy. You think different thoughts if you create upset or you create happy. And therefore, you will definitely act differently. So if you allow your imagination to provide the mold, the template for your new belief, how you would feel if you had it, how you would think, and how you would act, you always have in your mind a guideline that you can check back on. All right, here comes a situation. I feel that old emotion coming up that I used to have when I believed this. Now, in my imagination, I will picture myself walking down my street with the new belief. How would that me act in the same circumstance? Allow your imagination to provide those pictures. Once the pictures are provided, do it. That's it. because it's from a different belief, emotion, and thought, the actions will be different. And when you do something different in the quote-unquote same situation, you can't help but get a different result. It is only the same assignment of meaning and the same attitude and the same action which seems to create the repetitiveness. And then, yes, perhaps it is more attractive to swallow a pill to forget it. But if you address it, then once you have, in that sense, unraveled it, it is gone. It is unraveled. Does this make sense?
Yes, and I'll just add this quick note. I don't want to take a lot of time.
Now, you are a gift. We have said before, you cannot take time from anyone. You are all creating it anyway. They will create their time, you will create yours. But it is no accident that you are speaking with exactly who is present. So understand that what we are sharing with you and what you are sharing with us is of service to all. And boldly proceed.
Thank you, Elan.
Thank you.
I would understand after what you just said about 5 minutes ago that healing comes through understanding, creating, and accepting our own belief systems?
Well, to some degree. And it is also the allowance of wellness. For health is the rule, and sickness or dis-ease is the exception.
Right.
So it is simply an allowance of the restoration of your natural self.
I come from a very large family. I have 7 brothers and 2 sisters. And my mother and father were extremely very strict in bringing us up. And I can remember so many instances of just trying to be who I was, having to just leave my home completely, take a walk on the beach because we lived by the beach, come home and somewhat do something with those feelings of anger and sometimes even hate toward my mother for being so rigid and unwilling to look at another point of view.
All right. But that was, believe it or not, of service to you. For it helped you establish and firmly reestablish who you are. And you can actually take it a step further. You can allow her to be who she is, just as you are asking that she allow you to be who you are, and do so unconditionally, without even demanding that she allow you to be who you are, and go even one step further. Thank her. Thank her for allowing you to come to these realizations. Thank her for allowing her to provide a symbol that you are now choosing to use rather than store in the closet. Does that make sense?
Yes, a lot.
You will leave her scratching her head as well.
May I say one more thing?
Yes, you may.
I love you, Elan.
I love you all unconditionally. And thank you as well. Is that of service?
Yes.
If there are other specific issues, please share. Or in that sense, we can also interact with you in your dream reality. In a sense, loosely speaking, we understand they are closed, but when you are dreaming, keep your eyes open. All right?
Yes, thank you.
And we thank you. And send our greetings to your friends.
Thank you.
At this timing, allow us to once again unconditionally thank you all. Understand, we have said this before, we will share it again, but of course, we all know this is the first time. You are of service to us, exactly as you are. We would not want you to be anything but who you are, for we learn the most by who you choose to be, not who we would prefer you to be, which is not even within our belief systems, for we do not prefer someone to be anything other than what they are. So you are our wild card as well, and we thank you.